Hi everyone! Today we're going to be making this very simple neutral flower. And for our flower, I'm just working with 3 different colors of yarn. And I know that they're not the same brand, but they are all size 4 medium weight acrylic yarn. And I'm also going to be working with a size F or 5 or 3.75 millimeter crochet hook. But if you don't have a crochet hook of this exact size, that's fine. Just get as close as you can. And we're going to begin with a magic circle. And we're going to chain 1 and place 6 single crochets inside our magic circle. And once you have your 6 single crochets in place, then pull on your tail to tighten the gap in your magic circle. And we're going to slip stitch into our first single crochet stitch. And we're going to chain 1 to start our second row. And in the back loop only of each stitch in our row, we're going to place 2 single crochets. And that does include this first stitch where we placed our slip stitch. So right here. So go ahead and place your 2 single crochets in each stitch in the back loop only. And when you get to the end of your row, you should have a total of 12 single crochets. And at the end of your row, you're going to skip your slip stitch and your chain 1, and you're going to slip stitch into your first single crochet stitch. And for our next row, we're going to chain 1 and place 1 single crochet in the back loop only of our first stitch, and then we're going to place 2 single crochets in the back loop only of our second stitch. And we're just going to continue to alternate between 1 and 2 single crochets in the back loop only, going all the way around our row. And when we get to the end of our row, we should have a total of 18 single crochet stitches. And at the end of the row, again, we're going to skip our slip stitch as well as our chain 1, and we're going to slip stitch into our first single crochet stitch. So we're going to begin our outer row of petals by chaining 1. And then we're going to place 1 double crochet back in that same stitch where we just worked. And we are working in the full stitch now. Once you have your double crochet in place, then we're going to add a triple crochet stitch in that same stitch. So yarn over twice and insert your crochet hook back in that stitch. Then yarn over and pull up through. And you should have 4 loops on your crochet hook. Then yarn over and drop 2 loops at a time until you finish out your stitch and only have 1 loop on your crochet hook. So now moving on to our next stitch, we're going to begin with a triple crochet. Then we're going to place a double crochet in that same stitch. And then we're going to place a slip stitch. And we just completed our first petal. So to make your subsequent petals, you're going to slip stitch into your next stitch and then chain 1. Then working back in that same stitch, we're going to place a double crochet as well as a triple crochet. And then working in our next stitch, we're going to place a triple crochet a double crochet and a slip stitch. So each of your petals should take up 2 stitches, just like that. And I'll go over one more petal with you. So we're going to slip stitch into our next stitch and chain 1. Then we're going to place a double crochet and a triple crochet in our same stitch. Then moving on to our next stitch, we're going to place a triple crochet, then a double crochet, then a slip stitch. And those are all in that same second stitch, just like that. So that's the pattern that you're going to follow, going all the way around your row. And at the end of your row, you should have a total of 9 petals, and you should have ended in the stitch directly beside your slip stitch here. So now we're going to cut and tie off our yarn. So now we're going to attach our light brown yarn to our crochet hook using a slip knot. And working right here in your first front loop from your second row, you're going to insert your crochet hook. And you can kind of tell that this is the first front loop because this is the slip stitch here. But it doesn't really matter where you begin to work as long as it's somewhere in the middle of one of your petals. And we're going to yarn over and drop the 2 loops on our crochet hook for a slip stitch. Then we're going to chain 1. And we're going to place 2 double crochets back in this same loop that we just worked. And now working in our next loop here, we're going to place 2 double crochets. Then we're going to place a slip stitch back in that second loop where we just worked. And that will complete our first petal. So now working in our next front loop here, we're going to place a slip stitch and then a chain 1, and then we're going to place 2 double crochets back in our same loop that we've been working in, like that. Then moving on to our next loop, we're going to place 2 double crochets. And working back in that same loop, we're going to place a slip stitch. So just like our previous row of petals, each of these petals should take up 2 of your front loops. So I'll show you that pattern for the petal again. So we're going to slip stitch into our next front loop, and we're going to chain 1. Then we're going to add 2 double crochets back to that same loop. And in our next loop, we're going to place 2 double crochets and a slip stitch. So that's how you place your petals in this row. So go ahead and place all 6 of your petals, and that will get you to the end of your row. And at the end of your row, you're just going to skip this slip stitch loop, and you're going to slip stitch back in your first front loop that you worked your first petal in. Then we're going to cut and tie off our yarn. And I am pulling all of my tails to the back as I complete each row. And so now we're going to attach our cream colored yarn to our crochet hook using a slip knot. And working right here in this last row of front loops, so this row right here, we're going to insert our crochet hook in one of those front loops. And so from here, we're just going to place a single crochet. So we're going to do that by yarning over and pulling up through the loop, and then yarning over and dropping our 2 loops. And we're just going to place one single crochet in each of these loops. And I went ahead and included my slip stitch as one of the loops, so I have a total of 7 single crochets. So from here, we're just going to slip stitch into our first single crochet. And we're going to cut and tie off our yarn. And you can use your tails to attach this to a project, or you can just tie them all together as one tail, whatever works best for you. And now we are done with our flower. Please let me know in the comments below if you experienced any issues while you were making this, and I will do my best to help you out. If this video helped you, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel, Lipstick on a Rig. Thank you so much for working with me, and I hope you have a wonderful, awesome day.